Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. Lots coming up today. We're talking about cladding as leaseholders finally get some good news. Is it enough? We're remembering MP Jack Dromey, a man liked right across Parliament. Plus, we're discussing youth violence and body image too. And I have an interview with Lisa Squire, whose daughter Libby was brutally murdered in 2019. First, it's the news with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it's 12 o'clock. Let's get you up to date here on GB News. Novak Djokovic has won his appeal against deportation from Australia. With the judge ruling, he did have the required medical exemption to enter the country without a COVID vaccine. Djokovic's interview with Border Force confirmed he has caught COVID-19 twice before and he hasn't had a jab. The court was also told the government's decision to revoke the tennis player's visa was unreasonable. Australia's immigration minister, though, says he reserves the right to exercise personal power to expel the star from the country. In an exclusive interview with GB News, Goran Djokovic, the tennis star's uncle, told us his nephew's been treated like an animal.
I don't know what's wrong with the people there, you know. If Novak is not welcoming, they're supposed to say that. Please don't come. And if they issue the visa for him, and after that they arrest him, this is like for me, it looks like trap for the animals, you know, like a wolf, animals in the mountain, you know, and they invite him to come and they trap him and put him in the jail, trying to put him on his knees.
The government is considering cutting the COVID isolation period for fully vaccinated people in England from 7 days to 5. Speaking during a visit to a vaccination centre in his West London constituency, Boris Johnson says ministers will follow the science. The Prime Minister also says lateral flow tests will continue to be freely available.
I think that we'll use them as long as they're very important. And there's a similar argument to be had about the quarantine period, whether to come down from 7 days to 5 days. We're looking at that, and we will we'll act according to the science.
Pregnant women are being urged to get vaccinated against COVID-19 to protect their babies. The Department of Health and Social Care say nearly all of the pregnant women, 96% of them who were hospitalised last year between May and October with COVID symptoms, hadn't taken the vaccine. The government says the jabs are safe during pregnancy and have no impact on fertility. Around 100,000 critical workers will receive bundles of lateral flow tests today. It's part of the government's bid to protect key services. Food processing staff, border force officers and air traffic controllers will be among those to receive the swabs. Ministers hope the test will ensure people aren't self-isolating unnecessarily and will help to prevent outbreaks in workplaces. The government says it will not hesitate to introduce a developer's tax to hit those responsible for dangerous cladding if firms do not voluntarily step up to fix safety defects. The Housing Secretary Michael Gove says developers need to start contributing to the cost this year, which is estimated to be around £4 billion. Liam Spender is a spokesman for the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign. He told GB News it's an issue affecting thousands of people.
Since Grenfell more than 4.5 years ago, about 90,000 buildings across the UK have found themselves in this unholy mess of being in buildings that have flammable cladding or have fire safety defects inside the building, things like fire doors that don't work properly, fire alarms that don't work properly, things like that. They've been trapped and unable to sell, and some of them are facing ruinous bills.
8 men who took legal action against Manchester City Football Club after complaining of their abuse by a former youth coach, they've lost their High Court fight. The former players claimed that the convicted paedophile Barry Bennell abused them when they were playing for teams he coached between 1979 and 1985. The players said Manchester City was vicariously liable for the harm they suffered, but a judge ruled against them. Mr Justice Johnson said the connection between the abuse and Bennell's relationship with the football club was insufficient and that the claims were brought too late to result in a fair trial. Buckingham Palace has unveiled the lineup of celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. It's going to mark her 70 years on the throne, with a 4-day UK bank holiday weekend from the 2nd to the 5th of June. It's also going to include a platinum pudding competition that will be judged by a panel including Dame Mary Berry, street parties, a concert and a chance to see the Queen's homes up close. The discovery of the UK's largest and most complete fossil of a so-called sea dragon has been described as one of the greatest finds in Britain. The bones of the ichthyosaur were found at Rutland Water last February. They were dug up in August and September. The reptile lived around 180 million years ago. It's estimated to be 10 metres long, with its skull alone weighing nearly a tonne. Well, it's 6 minutes past 12. That is all your news for now. I'll have an update for you at past. Now the briefing with Gloria.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, at long last, some leaseholders are to get help with unsafe cladding on their flats. I'm talking to MP Stephen McPartland, who led the Tory rebellion on this. When Labour MP Jack Dromey died suddenly last Friday, heartfelt tributes poured in from across the House. I'm talking to Labour MP Ellie Reeves, who has known Jack for decades. Libby Squire, a student at Hull University, was murdered in 2019. Her mother Lisa and Hull MP Diana Johnson, who is also chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, will want all sexual offences to be taken much more seriously. I'll be talking to both of them later. And what are the perfect pictures on social media doing to our mental health? I'm talking with Conservative MP Luke Evans, who wants digitally altered images to be clearly labelled. It's 4.5 years since the horror of the Grenfell Tower fire, and at last it seems help is coming for some leaseholders. Owners of flats between 11 and 18 metres have been facing crippling bills to fix something which wasn't their fault. But Michael Gove will announce a £4 billion package today, and the government plans to make developers pay for their work. Joining me now is Conservative MP for Stevenage, Stephen McPartland. He led a rebellion against the fire safety bill backed by 31 other Tories. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming in the studio today.
Good to see you, Gloria.
So we will be hearing from Michael Gove about 3:30, we think, in the House of Commons this afternoon. You've been a vocal critic of the government's inaction on dangerous cladding. Is he going to say enough this afternoon to get you on side?
Well, he's going to say almost enough to get us on side. He's actually done a very good job. He's listened with us. He's worked constructively with us. We're now up to the level of £9 billion to support leaseholders. So today's going to be another big victory for leaseholders, another step on the way. But I still need to see, I need a bit more reassurance, as do my colleagues. And there are two areas that we're very concerned about. So the first is cladding is an external fire safety defect, but there are also internal fire safety defects, such as missing fire breaks. Now, as we've seen with the terrible events overnight in New York, missing fire breaks are incredibly important because they stop fire spreading from flat to flat inside, and they were also the responsibility of developers. So we need clarification that this money is also going to go after the developers for internal as well as external fire safety.
Now, Matthew Pratt, the chief executive of house builder Redrow, said you can't keep putting all the responsibility for this on developers. Now, you might say, well, he would say that, wouldn't he? But surely these builders must have been following building regulations, and if they weren't tough enough, then isn't that the fault of politicians?
Well, this is something we've spoken to Michael about a great deal, because he has been listening and working with us on this. And there is the reality that some of these buildings were actually probably built illegally. They have missing fire breaks, which according to the design guidance should have been there. And there is an issue around the regulatory regime and then enforcement over it. So what we're going to hear today is very positive for leaseholders, but they've been in a very difficult position for many years, and our buildings are not safe.
And the question that the campaign groups have is whether this is a partial solution to the problem. End Our Cladding Scandal campaign group spokesperson put it like this: the government is still focusing on cladding, but they know full well it goes beyond that, and people are still facing life-changing costs. And it's, as you say, leaseholders in buildings with other fire safety problems. Are you going to seal the deal on that, or are these campaign groups right to be concerned that it's not going to be the full deal?
Oh, no, I mean, we've worked with them for over 12 months, and I remember one of the first comments we did to launch it was, I asked the previous Secretary of State to, get out of the ivory tower, stop talking and start helping. And I think we're in a position where we're £9 billion on in terms of help and support, and people understand a lot more about the issue. But, a lot of our buildings are safe, and there's been a lot of gold plating, and some of our buildings are not safe. And what Michael's going to try and do is work with us and the cladding groups. And I know we will have met the cladding groups today to ensure that there's good communication, good conversations, and we focus our energies on those buildings that are not safe and get them safe for those leaseholders.
The Treasury's made clear that there won't be any new money to remove cladding. So if Michael Gove's plans don't work, he's put the developers on notice that they're going to have to foot the bill. But, for example, what if they say, well, no, then that means cuts in the levelling up budget if it has to come from inside the budget? Is that likely to be to happen? Because, of course, those new voters that you got, they need that money spent in those areas, don't they?
Oh, yeah, very much so. So the £5 billion's come from the Treasury. This is an additional £4 billion. And one of the things that we've always asked for is for the government to put the money up front and then claim it back from the developers. So in fairness, Michael's doing what myself and the leaseholder groups have actually asked for over all these months. So I think the developers will cough up because it's going to be in their interest. If they don't, the Treasury have said we can use the tax system to go after them for it.
And final question to you. It's more than 4 years since Grenfell. Those images will haunt us all forever. Why has it taken so long to get to this place?
I genuinely don't know. I mean, one of the things that I found incredibly frustrating all the way through was that everybody we spoke to and tried to work with within government and civil service, within the industries, they just continued to make the problem bigger and bigger and bigger. And it got harder and harder. But, instead of it being we're trying to fix 3 or 4 problems, it became fixing 300 or 400 problems. So many things got pulled in. And one of the things Michael has done is actually sat down and tried to work with us to iron out what are the real issues and how can we deliver for leaseholders.
Stephen McPartland, Conservative MP for Stevenage. A real pleasure to have you on the show today. I hope we see you again. And
Thanks, Gloria.
I hope you hear everything you want to hear this afternoon in the
too.
statement. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Indeed. Last Friday, I lost a dear friend, Jack Dromey. Jack and I were both elected to Parliament in 2010. He was a kind and generous colleague and friend, and I feel lucky to have known him. Of course, I was upset to learn about his sudden death on Friday. Our next guest, Ellie Reeves MP, has known Jack for much longer, before either of them were in Parliament. She's the Shadow Justice Minister and Labour MP for Lewisham West and Penge. And she joins us now from her constituency. Ellie, thank you for joining us. It's good to see you.
And you, Gloria.
You have known Jack for a long time, since before you were a Member of Parliament. Just tell us in your own words what he was like.
Well, I first met Jack as a young trade union lawyer, which was my career before entering Parliament, probably about 16 years ago now. And I was working on a big industrial dispute at Heathrow Airport, a large number of low-paid workers working for Gate Gourmet had just been sacked, and we were leading the campaign to get them reinstated. And Jack was just an absolute tower of knowledge and strength. You know, of course, he led the Grunwick strikes back in the 70s, and he just provided so much energy and advice and support. And then a few years later, I was elected to Labour Party's National Executive Committee, and Jack served on the NEC as Treasurer. And again, Jack was someone who was so willing to give up his time to offer advice, support and friendship. And he just will be hugely missed, both inside Parliament, but also in the wider Labour and trade union movement.
He was a real Labour stalwart, a firebrand, but actually he was liked by colleagues across the House, wasn't he?
He was, and you know, he was a real firebrand. You know, I can't really remember, you know, any big industrial issue over the past sort of during, you know, my time of being involved in the movement that had not been on the forefront of, whether it was rights for agency workers, gangmasters licensing authority, compensation for victims of asbestos exposure. Jack was always there, but equally he commanded respect across the whole House. I think, you know, Jack's ability to, you know, argue at any point, but with such passion and intellect, meant that he was hugely respected by everyone that met him. And, you know, the thing is with Jack, you know, first and foremost, he was a fantastic family man as well. You know, whenever I saw Jack in the tea room, he'd always ask after my children, and his grandchildren are similar ages to my children. So we'd often just have a chat about, you know, what his grandkids were up to, what my children were up to, and that friendliness, that, you know, always wanting just to, you know, see how you were doing is something that I think everyone will always remember about Jack.
The tribute, Ellie. Will MPs across Parliament be able to pay tribute to him in Parliament? His death was so sudden.
Yeah, and I know that MPs will want to pay tribute to Jack in Parliament. I think, you know, all of our thoughts at the moment are with Harriet Harman, and, you know, respect her issues in relation to when she would want that to happen. So I'm sure we will pay tribute, but I think that needs to be at a time that Harriet is comfortable with. Harriet's the mother of the house, and, you know, I think our thoughts are all with Harriet at this time.
Absolutely. Final question, if I may, on the news of the day. The government are about to get tough on developers, we read, to help those who have unsafe homes through the sort of cladding that caused Grenfell. Labour's reactions to those plans, which we'll be hearing more about this afternoon from Michael Gove.
Well, look, you know, we welcome measures to tackle this crisis, but the reality is that, you know, the tragedy of Grenfell was 4.5 years ago. We've had 17 statements from the government since then, and actually, you know, we'll listen to the detail, but the reality is, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing in the announcements today about remedial work that isn't related to cladding, like fire breaks and so on. And, you know, also it's unclear where where the money will come from if the developers won't pay out, and also what is the time frame from this. You know, I've got constituents living in a block in my constituency where for the last 4.5 years they've been in limbo, stuck in homes that they're unable to sell or mortgage, paying for a waking watch and facing bills of 30,000 plus. So my worry is that the measures today are too little and too late for a lot of people.
Labour MP and Shadow Minister Ellie Reeves MP, thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thanks.
Now, antisocial behaviour and youth violence is a problem all across the country. I'll be talking about tackling it with Stockton South MP Matt Vickers. Next, he's got a parliamentary debate this week. Before that, it's time for your weather.
Hello again. It's a rather grey Monday for most, with a lot of cloud out there, but it's turning milder, certainly in the west, whereas across much of the east, still quite a chilly feel, but much of the east will stay dry. Further west, it's going to be dank and drizzly thanks to this warm front, but it is, as I say, bringing milder air, so temperatures on the rise across the west, double digits likely here, but a lot of cloud and outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle covering parts of the Midlands, northwest England, particularly western Scotland. Much of eastern England will stay dry, but a bit of drizzle is possible here and there. And further west, it won't rain all day. Parts of Wales, southwest England having some drier spells, but quite soggy in western Scotland, Northern Ireland. But look at the temperatures here, double digits, maybe up to 11 or 12, whereas in the east, just 6 or 7 Celsius. Now, in the east, we'll see temperatures dropping early on, but actually then later in the night as the rain and drizzle pushes in, so the milder air moves in as well. Whereas for Scotland and Northern Ireland, clearer skies here will allow the temperatures to drop. For England and Wales, it will be quite wet, some heavy bursts of rain possible as this thicker cloud continues to drift in, but that will, as I say, keep the temperatures up. A chilly start then for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but a much brighter day here tomorrow. A few showers in the northwest. Quite a grey affair for the Midlands, South Wales, southern and eastern England, with outbreaks of rain, particularly across the southeastern corner, but that will slowly pull away into the afternoon and evening. Brighter skies for northern England, North Wales come the afternoon, some sunshine likely here, but as a result it won't be as mild. It'll turn quite cold quite quickly with these clear skies on Tuesday night across more central parts. We'll still keep a brisk breeze blowing across the north throughout the next 48 hours, actually pretty gusty here. But light winds further south will allow a touch of frost. And increasingly through the rest of this week, we are going to see some dense patches of fog around, but not much in the way of rain through the rest of this week.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. Antisocial behaviour and youth crime are problems right across the country, but what's being done to address these problems? Well, Conservative MP for Stockton South, Matt Vickers, is leading a debate in Parliament on Wednesday on this. I'm delighted to say he joins me now. Hi, Matt. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Gloria.
Now, antisocial behaviour, massive issue in every constituency. It made up a large part of my casework. I'm sure that is the same for every MP. You're leading a parliamentary debate on this week. Tell me what sort of examples and issues in your constituency have prompted you to demand this debate in Parliament.
Yeah, I think, do you know what? I have two communities specifically in my constituency that have been subject to some terrible you know what? I don't like to use the word antisocial behaviour on its own, because when you speak to people out there, what they are suffering from is not just antisocial behaviour. It's not an annoyance or an irritation. It's not slightly antisocial. Sometimes this stuff escalates and it becomes crime, which is why we've badged it up as youth crime and antisocial behaviour. Because actually, I've spoke to people. We had a fair few surgeries in these areas. One of the areas is less affluent than the other, but they're suffering from the same problems. It's not people who got the window broken. It's people who've had the window broken 6 or 7 times. It's people who dread a Friday and a Saturday night because they know that this very small group of young people are going to come round and make life a misery for everybody. It's elderly people who don't leave the house at night, who don't want to go to the shop because they've seen the gang that's hanging around outside. And when you look at this problem, it's got so many causes that you've got to look at quite a wide and varied solution to it as well.
I absolutely agree with you. It infuriates me too when people refer to it as low-level antisocial behaviour, because it's the stuff of things that it blights lives, really. Now, the way these debates that you are leading work is that the minister responsible, the government minister responsible, will have to respond. You will presumably demand action on particular areas on how to tackle this. What sort of things will you be looking to secure from the minister?
I think so. Actually, when you look at crime per se across the country, the government is doing a hell of a lot. We've got more police on the streets. In my part of the world, we're getting more enforcement officers, street wardens. We're doing, we're giving the police more power to tackle stop and search. Actually, we need to look at this as a specific issue, because the biggest irritant for the public is that they've reported it. They've reported it again last week, they've reported it the week before, and they don't see anything being done. It takes too long to see, young people held to account for their actions in these things. And actually, the other part of that is that the young person who commits that offence, who caused that antisocial behaviour, sits and waits. They might wait 6 months, they might wait a year before they feel the consequences of that. Well, actually, that's a year of continued bad behaviour. We need to speed up the processes that bring young people to account. Nobody wants to criminalise young people. No one wants a young person to set off in life with a criminal record and therefore end up with a life of huge criminal records and huge criminal behaviour. So we've got to find solutions. Young people have to be held to account for their actions. People cannot be subject to this sort of abuse and antisocial behaviour constantly, living their lives in misery. But B, we've got to find a better way forwards for these young people, whether that's through education, whether that's giving them more support, educating them a little bit more about the consequences of their actions. When
Labour were in power, I think it's fair to say they talked about antisocial behaviour a lot. Everybody had heard of an ASBO. Everybody knew what an ASBO was. Was it a mistake for David Cameron's government to replace the antisocial behaviour order with different orders, but that name, the ASBO, did it keep it on the agenda just having that name?
Well, we've still got antisocial behaviour. Lots of it. Well, actually, didn't we take 16 different orders and restrictions and pieces of paper, and we turned them into about 4 or 5? So it was a sensible thing to make that more navigable, to make it easier to understand and clearer for the young people, for the police officers, for the local authorities. I think that wasn't a bad thing. Actually, I think at the time of the debate, there was a discussion about the burden of proof on the point at which you can take action against young people when they're doing this sort of stuff. Amendments in the other house meant that we had to water that down a bit. You've got to find a higher burden of proof. I think, moreover, one of the things that's quite alarming I've learned as I've gone on is there's not a national collective record of what's going on out there with these orders, how often they're being used, how effective they're proving. We can't look nationally at where it's being done and what's being done with these orders to assess their effectiveness, and that's slightly alarming. So I think by having the debate this week, we push it back on the agenda. We keep pushing it on the agenda because the elderly people living in Thornaby, the young family who've saved and bought that nice house and now are having their lives made a misery, they need answers and need to know that we're doing something about it, and that's why we're debating it this week.
It's a much bigger problem than people might think. According to the Crime Survey of England and Wales, around 39% of people personally experienced antisocial behaviour in their local area between October 2018 and September 2019. It is huge, but we really hear it being talked about in Parliament, and I wonder if you think it's a sign that's about that disconnect between what happens in Westminster in the main chamber and what's happening on the ground. What do you think?
I think, do you know what? I think it's a really valid point. That's exactly why we're having the debate this week, because I have not seen it discussed in there in a very long time. I think the public out there feel there is a slight disconnect in the sense that, the balance of power is wrong. These young people should be scared by the process. It shouldn't be, we should put more power in the hands of the police and local authorities to tackle it. That's what we're pushing for this week. Although, to be fair, I think most MPs like me have surgeries every week and have this discussion with residents, and we all hear from it, and it affects so many people. Yeah, it's the elderly people who are now, I've spoke to elderly people who are scared to go out at night. They don't want to go to the local shop of an evening. I had a discussion with one woman who was telling me she didn't know whether it was best to leave the lights off or on when the curtains were closed, because what do we think would attract more trouble to her house? That is just horrifying. Like the fact that someone in their late years is having that concern. And it's not just in certain communities. I spoke to someone in a very affluent part of town, a young family that saved up, that bought the house, but because of where they live and the spaces around their house, it means there's quite a lot of young people gathering there. And from the smell of weed to the stone that hits the window to not letting your kids go outside for fear of what might happen, to what then happens when someone goes out there and tackles these youngsters about these problems. And is the law on the side of those who go out and try and tackle the problem themselves, or is it on the side of the young people who then do whatever the hell goes on after that? It's a scary thing, and we need to make sure that our councils and our police officers have all the powers they need to tackle it.
Matt Vickers, Conservative MP for Stockton South. I'm really pleased that we've covered this today. I think it will chime with a lot of viewers' experiences. Good luck in your debate this week. Thanks, Matt. In 2019, Hull student Libby Squire was brutally murdered. Now her mother and Hull MP Diana Johnson want so-called low-level sexual offences to be treated much more seriously. There are often warning signs that someone may go on to do something far, far worse. But first, here's the news with Rosie.
Good afternoon. At 12:30, here are the latest headlines. Novak Djokovic has won his appeal against deportation, with a judge ruling he did have the required medical exemption to enter Australia without a COVID vaccine. But the country's immigration minister says he reserves the right to exercise personal power to expel the star from the country. In an exclusive interview with GBNews, Gloria De Piero, the tennis star's uncle, told us his nephew's been treated like an animal. Building developers in the UK have until March to agree a funding plan to replace dangerous cladding on low-rise flats or be forced to pay with a new tax. The Housing Secretary Michael Gove says developers need to start contributing to the estimated £4 billion cost this year. The government is considering cutting the COVID isolation period for fully vaccinated people in England from 7 days to 5. Speaking during a visit to a vaccination centre in his West London constituency, Boris Johnson says ministers will follow the science. The Prime Minister also says lateral flow tests will continue to be freely available. Buckingham Palace has unveiled the lineup of celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. It will mark her 70 years on the throne, with a 4-day UK bank holiday weekend from the 2nd to the 5th of June. It's going to include a platinum pudding competition that's going to be judged by a panel including Dame Mary Berry, street parties, a concert, a chance to see the Queen's homes up close as well. It's 12:32. You're right up to date here on GB News. I'll be back with more on today's top stories for you at 1 o'clock.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. Libby Squire in 2019, Sarah Everard and Sabina Nessa in 2021. Women taken from our streets and murdered by men. Libby was just 21 and studying at Hull University. Now Libby's mum, Lisa Squire, and Labour MP for Hull, Diana Johnson, are calling for a clampdown on offences such as flashing and voyeurism. I'm delighted that they both join me now. We're going to start, first of all, in the studio with Diana Johnson, who is now chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee and was Libby's MP.
Yes, when she was a student at Hull University, yes.
And just tell me how you came to meet and campaign with Lisa, her mum.
Well, I think people in Hull were completely shocked about what happened to Libby. There was a huge outpouring in the city and wanting to support the family. And obviously it was devastating when Libby's body was found and then we had the subsequent trial. But I think what came to light was that the person who did this to Libby had actually been prowling the streets of my constituency for several months, I think about 18 months before he raped and killed Libby. And what came to light was that he'd been flashing, there'd been acts of voyeurism, he'd stolen things. Now, people didn't come forward at the time about this, but when Libby went missing, they did come forward and reported this behaviour. And I think, having talked to Libby's mum, Lisa, it was very clear that people didn't feel that if they reported those things at the time, anything would have happened. But actually reporting them and giving the police an opportunity to take action is really important. And then if that person had gone before the courts, there might have been a possibility of some intervention early on. So stopping people, stopping men early on when they start to flash and behave in this way, it's called low-level sexual offending. That's what we need to get in early.
And I was going to ask you about that. It is called low-level sexual offending.
Yes.
Should it be?
No, it shouldn't. And it's also called non-contact sexual offending because I'm sure, Gloria, like many women...
Yeah, I've been flashed at.
Yeah, I've been flashed at. And it's really upsetting when it happens. It's an assault, I think. Yeah. But it is described by the police and others as this low-level sexual offending. But it's a marker. If a man is doing that, there is a chance, a possibility that will escalate. And that's what happened in this case. And we know in the Sarah Everard case, which you referred to, that person, that man, had flashed previously and no action seems to have been taken for him either. So this is why we're really intent on getting in at the start of this behaviour.
You've mentioned a couple of examples there, but is there wider evidence that actually somebody who starts flashing goes on to do something which is awful in itself, but goes on to do something much more awful like rape and murder?
Well, it's obviously not all men who do this, but there is a link. And if you talk to academics who study this area, they will tell you that if a man can get away with flashing, then it gives him almost the confidence to move on to the next stage and perhaps then to assault, to rape, to murder. So it's an indication that there is a problem that needs to be addressed as early as possible. And that's the problem at the moment. The police told me that even if this man had gone before the courts for some of these actions, little would have been done because it wouldn't have met the threshold for him to be referred into services or to get help, assistance, whatever it was that was required in this case. So he was just left on the streets and carried on this pattern of behaviour, and then it escalated.
You're a very powerful MP now. You chair a very powerful select committee. How can you use your new role to get things like this on the government agenda? Because you're a chair of a cross-party MP, but you're also a Labour MP.
And of course, this is a cross-party issue. And in fact, the MP for where Libby came from, Steve Baker, I've worked with him. We've met the minister together to try and get some movement on this. But you're absolutely right. The Home Affairs Select Committee has already identified that violence against women and girls is a key issue for us. We've started one inquiry into looking at rape prosecutions and why they've gone down so much in recent years. And we will certainly be looking in the years to come at a series of inquiries around violence against women and girls and what more we can do. So I think that the committee is well aware that we need to keep looking at this.
And we're going to get Lisa on the phone very shortly. We had a few technical problems about getting her in video, but we absolutely want to hear from her.
She's an incredible woman. I just want to pay tribute to Lisa and her family for what they've gone through. Absolutely no family should go through this, but Lisa's determined that something good should come out of this in terms of a change in the law or a change in government policy. And she was incredible when she spoke to the minister, explaining exactly what she wanted for her daughter's memory.
I have to say, everything that I've read about Lisa absolutely chimes with that. There's so many quotes that I could pick out, which I've been going through this morning, but also that she won't let him take any more from her.
No.
That she has a family. She even referred to her dog, and you know, she takes this campaign seriously, but she also takes her family seriously. Something that's relatively new. I don't know how new it is this. I'm going to talk to Lisa about this too, because unbelievably, her other daughter Beth. The fear is that she was spiked on a night out. Tell us about spiking.
Well, again, this is another issue that we know relates to violence against women and girls, although some boys and men have had their drinks spiked. What happened at the end of last year was that it came to light that people were being injected in nightclubs or in pubs on an evening out. There was an indication that this had started to happen around the country, particularly with young people, young students. And so, again, the Home Affairs Select Committee has decided that we will have a look at this. We're going to look at spiking, and we're going to look at whether this is a new development around injecting people. But we know it's often for sexual motives, also for financial motives, but also, worryingly, that some people think this is a joke, and it's good fun to play this joke on your friends, spike their drink or inject them. So we want to get to look at the evidence, look at what the police are doing, local authorities, licensing authorities, to see what more can be done and whether we need a specific offence for spiking.
And when we think about the women who have been lost, murdered by strangers, the instinct is always like, what can we do to stop this? But how do you legislate? How do you introduce laws about absolute psychopaths? You know, what can you do? These people are bad people.
Well, yes, there are bad people about, and obviously there is no way you can stop every occurrence of a person behaving in appalling ways. But what you can do is make sure that our systems are in place to identify if someone, in the case of that we've been talking about, of flashing and voyeurism, if they're exhibiting that behaviour, then actually there is action early on. The police can get in there and do something early on, and the courts can do something early on. So I think it is a case of that.
How do you find, how have you found working with Lisa, and how does she, I mean, you know, you think, how do you even put one foot in front of the other, frankly?
Indeed. I mean, the strength of that woman is just incredible, and she's an inspiration, really. And I think, you know, the fact that she wants to talk about what happened to her daughter and wants to campaign in this way is just remarkable. And, you know, we went to meet the minister, and it's no secret, really, we were all in tears in that meeting because of what, as a mother, she was describing and what had happened to her daughter. And I just feel that, you know, women like that who campaign and do the right thing on behalf of what's a dreadful situation for their family, you know, really need to be commended and supported, and that's why I'm very pleased to support her. Steve Baker, who's the Conservative MP in where Lisa lives, he's supporting her as well, and I just think that is absolutely the right thing to do, and I'm really pleased that you're talking to her today.
When was that meeting with the Minister?
It was in the summer.
So about
last year, yes.
about 6 months or so ago.
Alongside that, I put some amendments down to a bill that was going through Parliament, so we could have some early intervention for people, or for men who were found to have been flashing or acting in ways of voyeurism, things like that. And the government didn't accept those amendments, but they certainly said they understood why we were bringing them forward, and they were very keen, I think, to encourage the public to come forward and report acts of flashing or voyeurism, because as I said in Libby's case, people came forward, but only once Libby had disappeared.
Right.
Then they came forward and said, well, there was this man at the end of the road doing this thing, and I'm a bit worried, was that part of what was going on? But that was really, in a way, too late. And it is about encouraging people to come forward.
Let's bring Lisa in on the phone. Lisa, hi.
Hi. Sorry, the connection was a bit poor.
I'm so pleased to hear your voice, because when Diana first told me about you, and she's reinforced this on the programme today, about what an incredible woman you are, actually. Of course, we'd all rather not be talking to you in the nicest way possible. Tell me in your own words what happened to Libby in 2019.
Well, I dropped Libby back off at university on the Sunday, and then on the Thursday night, when she went out clubbing with her friends, that was quite normal, and they'd been to a pre-party. She'd had quite a lot to drink. They walked up to the club, and sadly, she wasn't allowed entry to the club because the doorman thought she was too drunk. Her friends put her in a taxi. The taxi driver took her back to her home address, but she didn't go into her home for some unknown reason. She went for a walk, ended up sitting on a bench in a high street where, unbeknown to us, there was a sexual predator in the area. He abducted her, he raped her and murdered her, and threw her body in a river.
Goodness. That is a lot to take in, just to listen to.
Yeah.
Goodness only knows what it's like to lose a daughter well, full stop.
It's horrendous.
Of course it is. And you've decided to use your energy, and Diana tells me you still have considerable energy to campaign for change. Diana was telling me how you had met a minister in the summer to press for change. Just talk to us about the change that you seek.
I was really encouraged when I read Diana's proposals, because, you know, if the man that killed Libby had been apprehended earlier, when he was committing the other non-contact sexual offences, there's every chance Libby would still be alive today. So when we had the meeting with the minister, I felt very encouraged. She listened and agreed that more needed doing, but you know, and that it was a tough thing to do, you know, because by nature these non-contact sexual offences are committed very quickly. Girls and young women are just absolutely, you know, horrified at the time, and they're not reported very often. So for me, it's about getting, you know, women and young girls to report these offences, and the police do want to know about them. They've told me that if they know about them, they can do something about them. They can join DOP, and that's so important, because I don't think young girls and women think they're going to be taken seriously. And yes, I think these perpetrators, they need to be helped. But some of them need help, you know, not just imprisonment or fines. They need help as well.
I've been reading a lot of what you've said over the years, and so many powerful quotes. I read a quote by you about talking to your other daughter, Beth. And you said, I feel I have to give her the mummy lecture before she goes out partying. And that's not right. They should be free to do whatever they want. Very powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, but you do. You have to say to them, you know, if you're going to be drinking, make sure you look after your own drink. You know, don't leave it unattended. Watch who you're with. Don't be on your own. All those same things. Don't walk home in the dark. If you do walk home in the dark, make sure you've got your keys in your hand. You have to put in all these safety measures for girls and young women that we maybe don't do so much for our boys. And it's not right at all. And it's not fair.
And you fear that your daughter Beth may also have been spiked. Tell us about that.
Oh, that was, yeah, she'd been out for a night, rang me at 3 a.m, like my children tend to do. And she was sounded very different. She sent me a picture the next morning, and you know, and I rang her, and I said to her, "What on earth were you drinking last night?" And she said, "Mum, I didn't drink that much, but I've got a very strange bruise on my arm." So she sent me a picture. I had a look at it, and I said, "That to me looks like a puncture mark. I think you might have been spiked." And she said, "Well, yeah, I might have been," and that was that really. But it happens to so many of them, you know, at university. So we never knew for definite that Beth was spiked. It wasn't a definite, but it was a suspicion. And something that maybe she's learnt from, you know, to be a bit more aware of who she's around. Yeah, very sad that you have to do these things, though.
Lisa, I'm so pleased that we've managed to talk today. I'm so pleased that you've given us the time, and to Diana Johnson too. I have to say, Lisa, you are a strong advocate for yourself. I can hear that in your voice, but you have a very strong advocate working with you in Diana Johnson,
yes, I do.
the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, and I'm so grateful to you both. For talking to us today, and hope to talk to you again in the future. Diana, thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, goodness me. Now then, we are going to talk about body image and about social media. It's full of perfect pictures of seemingly perfect people leading perfect-looking lives. It's having a profound effect on our mental health. Joining me on the show now is Dr. Luke Evans, Conservative MP for Hinckley and Bosworth, and a registered GP. He's been campaigning to change the law, and he's got a 10-minute rule bill on Wednesday. Nice to see you again. Just tell our viewers what is...
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Tell us, what is a 10-minute rule bill?
So a 10-minute rule bill is a way that a backbench MP can try and bring forward a piece of legislation to either get it in place or get the government to do something about it in a particular area that they're concerned about. So it's a really good chance for highlighting an issue. And if you're lucky enough, you can get government support to get it in place into either bills or indeed take it up completely. So that's the aim of the game here today, is to bring this bill back again. I presented it a year ago, but with the parliamentary timetable, these bills often get timed out. So it's about trying to raise the profile up again. With the online harms bill coming up, this is a grand opportunity to say this issue needs to be dealt with.
Tell us exactly what you want to do, what you're proposing.
So this is a 10-minute rule bill that would basically say for anyone who puts out an edited picture which has the body proportions change. Let's say you make your biceps bigger or your waist slimmer, it needs to carry a logo to say that it's been altered. And that's if it's been published or on an edited platform. So it'll cover traditional media, things like magazines, but also for social media where it's being used in a commercial way.
Police that.
Sorry, I missed that.
Who would police it?
It would be covered by it's a great question, and it's one of the fundamental ones. It's covered by the Advertising Standards Authority, which already do a very good job. They most recently passed what's it called? When a review when they looked into someone who had altered the skin tone and was trying to promote a product. And they said that was not on, that was false advertising, and were reprimanded for it. So this is the step in the right direction. What I want to do is be able to give the government the chance for the Advertising Standards Authority and the industry to take control of this over the next 2 years, but on the have something on the backup of the statute book, which would mean the Secretary of State could put this in place. So this is all about trying to make sure that we have honest advertising, because I'm really worried about the effect it has on young people, particularly, who try to aspire to a body that they could never achieve, no matter what they ate, how much they trained, or whether they went to the gym. That's the key thing that I'm most concerned about.
And you are a GP. What sort of evidence, testimony do you hear from people? Can you tell that this is having an effect on people's mental health or perhaps even physical health?
Absolutely. At the worst case scenario, we already know there are 1.25 million people with anorexia and bulimia in the UK, and actually 1 million people using steroids to try and bulk up and improve their physiques. But at the lesser end, you see a lot of people who are stressed and concerned about the image and the pressure that social media creates. And we know that 1 in 5 adults and 1 in 3 teenagers suffer with anxiety and stress and shame about the way they look. And that can't be good for a society. And I'm really worried. The evidence supports that social media is perpetuating this. And this is why this idea of just labeling it to say that all is not as it seems is a really sensible way forward.
You are a Conservative MP. What do you say to those people who say this is a bit nanny state, isn't it?
It's a great question. I get asked this a lot. And for those free marketeers out there, the first thing I say to them, to have a free market and to have a perfect market, you need perfect information. So what we are doing is informing people. I'm not trying to ban it. Actually, it's one of these bizarre situations where I hope if my piece of legislation was passed, you'd never see this logo in the corner of a screen because companies and individuals would choose to never use it. But should they want to doctor their image, should they want to make their chest bigger, their waist slimmer, it carries a little logo so that when you're scrolling through hundreds of images on Instagram or looking through a magazine, you know that all is not quite as it seems, because that's what it's all about. Honest marketing, making sure that people are protected. And we have this already when it comes to political advertising, for video game advertising, and of course for food advertising when it comes to understanding what goes in the content and what we're taking on. This is what it's all about, informing the viewer to say things may not be as they seem.
And finally, and briefly, if you would, you are a Conservative MP, but you can't do this as a backbencher without government support. Are they going to back your proposals?
Well, I've already met with the Online Harms Minister, and this is, as I said, the second time I've brought this back. I've met with 3 Secretaries of State for DCMS so far and their Health Secretary about it. Rest assured I'm working on it, and I was on your show before talking about my campaign to register and regulate body image and get it recognised in law for the first time. That campaign's still ongoing, so this is all part of raising the issue in the wider sphere of Westminster, so watch this space.
Thanks so much for joining us, Dr. Luke Evans, MP. We'll chat to you again. Thank you. You've been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. The show is back every Monday to Thursday from noon. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan. For now, it's your weather.
Hello again. It's a rather grey Monday for most, with a lot of cloud out there, but it's turning milder, certainly in the west, whereas across much of the east, still quite a chilly feel. But much of the east will stay dry. Further west, it's going to be dank and drizzly thanks to this warm front, but it is, as I say, bringing milder air. So temperatures on the rise across the west, double digits likely here, but a lot of cloud and outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle covering parts of the Midlands, northwest England, particularly western Scotland. Much of eastern England will stay dry, but a bit of drizzle is possible here and there. And further west, it won't rain all day. Parts of Wales, southwest England having some drier spells, but quite soggy in western Scotland, Northern Ireland. But look at the temperatures here. Double digits, maybe up to 11 or 12, whereas in the east, just 6 or 7 Celsius. Now, in the east, we'll see temperatures dropping early on, but actually then later in the night as the rain and drizzle pushes in, so the milder air moves in as well. Whereas for Scotland and Northern Ireland, clearer skies here will allow the temperatures to drop. For England and Wales, it will be quite wet, some heavy bursts of rain possible as this thicker cloud continues to drift in, but that will, as I say, keep the temperatures up. A chilly start then for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but a much brighter day here tomorrow. A few showers in the northwest. Quite a grey affair for the Midlands, South Wales, southern and eastern England, with outbreaks of rain, particularly across the southeastern corner, but that will slowly pull away into the afternoon and evening. Brighter skies for northern England, North Wales come the afternoon, some sunshine likely here, but as a result it won't be as mild. It'll turn quite cold quite quickly with these clear skies on Tuesday night across more central parts. We'll still keep a brisk breeze blowing across the north throughout the next 48 hours, actually pretty gusty here. But light winds further south will allow a touch of frost. And increasingly through the rest of this week, we are going to see some dense patches of fog around, but not much in the way of rain through the rest of this week.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday